I want to get the read on all of this, even though the House Speaker was doing this with former speakers of the House, from Senator Kevin Cramer, the beautiful state of North Dakota, joins us right now. Senator, what do you think of this effort? I mean, this is obviously on the other side of the building where you are here, but to remove these four former speakers because of their ties to slavery or worse. What do you think of that?
You know, this is the first I've heard of this, Neil, and my gut reaction is I'm kind of disappointed. I served in the House for 6 years. I've never quite understood why we would honor rebels or traitors. That said, if you served as the Speaker of the House, you served as the Speaker of the House, and to try and somehow redefine or relitigate history rather than focusing on reshaping the future, I think it's unfortunate. But the Speaker is the Speaker. The Senate, fortunately, does not operate under the fiat of a single leader. We are a much more deliberative body, obviously. So I find that disappointing. Although I also say I appreciate that Senator Blunt prevented a fiat of a UC to remove the Confederate statues. Those statues are here at the decision of the states, and I think that the states are working through this, and hopefully they would ultimately make the decision perhaps to replace Confederate statues, but again, that's up to states, and I think it's best to honor that.
Senator, I'm just wondering now, in this back and forth on some sort of police reform legislation, Democrats have said what you and your colleagues have come up with, not enough. It's just like a slap on the wrist. Where is the common ground, you think, between you guys?
Well, I appreciated Chad's report, because as he said, even between the Senate and the House bills, they're 80% the same, and that's a pretty good, that's a pretty good batting average, if you will, for legislation, especially stuff as complicated as this. The fact that we have a bill to start with, I think, is encouraging. I do think we'll have a pretty open amendment process and debate process next week. We're all going to be under the spotlight that you guys provide for us, and I think that'll be a good opportunity to have a discussion. Yes, there are some red lines for various members, but I have to say this. I think even yesterday was a very good healing day for the Senate, when one senator made a mistake, a Democratic senator, in a speech, and Senator Tim Scott expressed his hurt in that. There was an apology that was provided, an apology that was received, and I thought, okay, that's as imperfect as it is, that's a good starting point. People that are willing to admit a mistake and apologize, I think that sets the table for a pretty good debate.
Senator, I'd be remiss I didn't mention some of the hoopla of this John Bolton book that's leaking out. Not so much the details in the book, Senator, but the fact this is the latest former official to, within months of leaving, come out with a searing tell-all book. Many, many others have done the same. In fact, it's happened to this president more than any other. I'm wondering why you think that is.
Well, I think it's because, imagine this, we elected a unconventional president. And I think in the case of Ambassador Bolton, it appears to me that he thought he was being hired to be the commander-in-chief. He wasn't. I thought it was a weird hire to begin with, because he and President Trump clearly have a different philosophy on particularly matters of war. I think the timing of his is particularly questionable, given that he's never shared these things when he had the opportunity in impeachment, for example. But Donald Trump is clearly not a swamp creature. He is clearly a China buster, and that can take lots of forms. But clearly, the rebuke of people who've been around this town for a long time is just, I think, the latest example of it.
Well, he's the latest to say, that is John Bolton, sir, that the president, quoting here, is not fit for office. He doesn't have the competence to carry out the job. Now, we can go back and forth on that. That's the former security advisor's view. But what came up in that is these ongoing negotiations he had, I guess continues to have, with the Chinese, trying to extract concessions and pointing out, reportedly, to the president of China, Xi Jinping, help me out of these farm states, and it will really help me out in 2020. If that is true, Senator, and there's no way of verifying this, and the president and his people have denied this, do you think that's an impeachable offense?
I don't know that it is impeachable, quite honestly. I think that we are all way overly sensitive about political speech and about political actions that take more of a political tone rather than the nuanced language of love that we all like to hide political speech behind. Our president doesn't do that. Now, that said, do I think it would be good for the president politically in farm country if we sold more soybeans to China? You bet. You bet it would. That said, I think our farmers in North Dakota would prefer to sell more soybeans, whatever political ramifications there are. So I just think we've all gotten way too sensitive with regard to our political speech. And certainly this president, who doesn't really, again, doesn't practice the type of nuance that is common in this town, speaks pretty well to the people in the Midwest and in rural America.
And you might be right. It's one thing I'm told in political circles, Senator, and you know this far better than I, maybe to think, yeah, this can help me out, you know, in these farm states by buying more farm products, but to, at least according to Mr. Bolton, outright say it and almost beg the Chinese president to do so. If that's true, that's a little weird, right?
It's certainly different, but remember that this transparency, this authenticity of Donald Trump is part of what people really love about him. And they frankly have gotten tired of politicians who sort of skirt around the edges in the way they talk, and they find him refreshing. Frankly, I find him rather refreshing.
All right, got it. Senator, thank you for taking the time. Always good catching up with you. Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota, beautiful state.